Hello, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of Safest Family on the Block. I'm your host, Jason, and joining me today is the legendary, the infamous Tony Blauer. Hello, sir. How are you today?
I don't know where to go from that intro, but maybe we should just wrap the show right now. That was great. I like that. I'm good, man. How are you?
I'm doing really well. Really excited to have you on. Now, folks who've been in the martial arts industry for a while do not need an introduction to this man. But for everybody else, Mr. Blauer, could you tell us a little bit about who you are and what you do?
Yeah, so I mean, the elevator speech is I teach self-defense, but it's way deeper than that. My company now, we've been around for 40 plus years, but we teach law enforcement, military, all the way down to, families, soccer moms, single dads, kids, the whole gamut. Probably the most counterintuitive but most important work we've done is figuring out how each one of us is quite literally a human weapon. There's elements of our physiology and our natural biomechanics and our psychology that sets us up for survival. And a lot of people who aren't like real serious hardcore martial artists don't understand that. Why? Because we've been domesticated for centuries, right? So, and let me elaborate on that a little bit. When we started having kingdoms and hiring soldiers to do battles, and the general populace stayed behind the walls, we lost that instinct and need to have to learn how to survive and how to protect ourselves. And so that's what I mean by domesticated. To quote a buddy of mine, I was explaining this to him, and he said, and I use this line, and I love sharing it. He said, "So essentially, we've outsourced our safety," and that kind of inspired the whole Be Your Own Bodyguard program. So we're locked in an elevator. This is longer than an elevator speech, but we're trapped in the elevator. I teach combatives to military. I teach defensive tactics to law enforcement. When I say I mean my team, myself, but probably the most important thing that I love to share, which is I was excited to do your podcast, is we've created an approach to teaching self-defense that's like taking a 4, 5, 6 hour first aid course from a firefighter or paramedic, right? It's life-saving skills you learn in a day. It doesn't make you a paramedic. It doesn't make you a doctor, but you've got life-saving skills in a day. You know how to put on a tourniquet, CPR, how to, basic first aid that is life-saving. And we created a program that just looked at it like that. What can we teach people in a day that improves their self-awareness, improves their situational awareness, teaches them some of the nuts and bolts of fear management, verbal de-escalation, and if push comes to shove, some simple gross motor movements to stun and run.
One of the things I love about what you just said is you made this whole list of things that you learn in that class, the very last of which is actually going hands-on.
Right.
And all these other skills are as important, if not more important, than the physical hand-to-hand.
100%. Like for anybody, that should always literally be the last resort. Yeah. And it's interesting, I'm sure you're familiar with the Malcolm Gladwell 10,000 hours. Well, his inspiration with that was, of course, a European researcher, Erickson, who had done all this work on it. And there's a lot of controversy as to whether it's 10,000 hours or 10 years or this. The reality is, if you understand how the brain works, if you do anything 10,000 times, you're going to get good at it. If you do anything for 10,000 hours, you're going to get good at it. The danger is, and this is one of our provocative quotes from our system, is we must be careful what we practice because we might really get really good at the wrong thing. And so in the literal sense, there's no such thing as muscle memory. There's neural patterns. So we learn how to do things over and over again. So to come back to your observation, like I listed like 6, 7 things, and only one of them was the physical. All the other soft skills help us navigate violence, avoid it, de-escalate it. But here's an interesting thing. If push comes to shove and you go, oh my God, I've got to protect myself and my family, that's still a soft skill to make that decision. The mind navigates the body. And I feel like that education is missing around the world. I mean, that should be we should be teaching basic self-defense in school, like in every school. Like, no, I'm not talking about martial arts school, I'm talking about elementary school.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, I think for the longest time, there was the idea that you kind of just relied on the bullies to get some de facto self-defense training, which was not a way to do it. And now that, with zero tolerance, you don't learn it accidentally. Yeah. But I think our kids should learn not just physical skills, as you say, but how to de-escalate a fight, how to give yourself permission to run away, and all of those things. I think it's especially important for parents, because for every long-term martial artist or law enforcement officer who's watching this show, there's 10 soccer moms who've never been in a fight, and 20 minivan dads who the last time they threw a punch, it was middle school.
Right.
And so having that kind of system, and that not just system, but systematization of your decision making. Because what's that saying, that you don't rise to the occasion, you fall to your training. So having a framework to wrap your thoughts around in the middle of a potentially violent situation can be incredibly useful.
Well, one of the things is, in using the soccer mom or the minivan dad or any parent, if you're taking your kids somewhere, you usually have a map in your mind, the route, or you're GPSing it. It's the same thing with self-defense and safety and violence. If we don't understand what we call the timeline of violence, like how things get set up, where we can change, I'm using a driving metaphor. If I'm driving somewhere and I notice traffic and I'm familiar with the area, I can get off, take a detour. So what are those exit ramps during the timeline of violence, right? And so it's when people train with us, we don't just say, look, here's how you do a palm strike, here's how you kick someone in the balls. Like, anyone can learn that, and you can figure that out on YouTube. And to go back to what you said, I mean, that's like little things you might pick up, might have picked up in school. But the real skill, especially if you're a parent or an entrepreneur or somebody who's feels they've got a purpose in the world, and they're like, it's to avoid violence at all costs, always. And that takes courage, because someone cuts you off, someone gives you the finger, someone gets in your face, someone's following you. What ends up getting stimulated is our ego, our pride, our fear. And now it's our emotional self that's kind of making decisions. Unless we've got a map that says, dude, like that's an accident that's going to happen if you don't slow down here and get off the road here. So, that whole blueprint of violence and timeline and understanding that changes everything. It really does. And it's all soft skills. It's all, understanding I'm here, I don't want to go here, right? And but this is now going back to the 10,000 hours. If your system is all, your training in every class is how to get out of a headlock, how to get out of a choke, what to do if someone tackles you, what to do if someone has a gun. Valid skills, but everything has gone horribly wrong if you're already at that point. And that's not to say they're not important, but if that's only what you practice, now we come back to the neural patterns, right? That all I know how to do is get out of a headlock. I don't know how to de-escalate. I don't know how to pick up danger early and go, oh, I got a bad feeling. Every victim of violence, Jason, every victim of violence who lived to tell the tale said they had a bad feeling. Every single one. I've been interviewing victims of violence since the 80s. That's going on 4 decades. I've read countless books on, violence and self-defense. And every story, if you look for it, somebody says that I knew something was wrong here, or I knew something wrong and I ignored it. And so we open up our seminars with that. We have a built-in GPS. It's called our intuition. And that GPS, just like if you punched in directions and you blew by your exit, what does the GPS tell you? It tells you, hey, you're going the wrong way, make a legal U-turn. So our own intuition does a very similar thing. It says, hey, I got a bad feeling about this, which is akin to, hey, make a legal U-turn. Like, don't continue going in that direction. But cognitive dissonance, fear, anxiety, stress, living in a bubble. No, I'm okay. People walk into danger all the time just because they have no clue.
Yeah, especially I think, and the reason we often do that, it kind of changes. It sounds a little sexist, but in some ways, reality and culture is still sexist, where women are often taught not to take that exit because they're conditioned to be polite. Whereas men, it's often the chest beating monkey dance kind of situation. But in either case, we've got this shoulder devil yapping in our ear about why we shouldn't turn around to ignore our intuition. I feel like that's one of the things that we need to overcome, is that social conditioning for one reason or another to ignore that intuition.
Yeah, I mean, it's just not taught. It's never taught. Like maybe your grandmother said, like my grandmother said to me, always trust your gut. But how many times in your life, bad relationship, bad business deal, bad whatever, where afterwards you're talking to a trusted loved one or a buddy, and you went, I knew that guy was going to screw us, or I knew that was going to happen, or we remember some vague premonition about this person's not good, or this is not a good decision. But depending on your age and your maturity, you go for it. Like, you go, don't touch that, that's hot. Yeah, thanks, Dad. Ow, shit, that's, like not everything burns like that, and you learn your lesson. But very, very often, every person, I've been teaching now for 43 years. I ask that question every class. Who's been screwed over in a relationship? Who's been screwed over in a business deal? And how many of you afterwards went, I knew that person was going to lie to me, or knew that person was going to do this? And there's like, it's 100% of the time people go, yeah. But in the moment, depending on your maturity, depending on your experience, you stop there. And I always make this, it's kind of not a joke, but this cartoony, that intuition whispers in your ear, right? And it's going, hey, I wouldn't do this if I were you. And you're like, I got this. I'm okay. Get out of here. And then like a week later, a day later, an hour later, we're like, man, I should have listened. But I don't know if that's just human nature. We try to address it in our training, and we have a really deep talk about it. We do exercises with it. We try to inspire people to practice training themselves to listen to your intuition, because the intuition just pops up. It's kind of like this, like, should I do this? Should I do that? And then we just encourage people, like, explore that and find out where it goes, as opposed to just shutting it down. So it's developing. It really helps cultivate better self-awareness. And here's the thing: self-awareness informs situational awareness, more accurate situational awareness, and self-awareness and good situational awareness make the space for critical thinking, something the world is sorely lacking.
Interesting. So as you're walking around, you notice that little thing and you listen to it, then you take a look. You approach that with curiosity rather than either just shuffling it aside or choosing to ignore it or tamping it down because it might be inconvenient, or maybe you're hoping that the situation is not going to get bad, but the part of you knows that no, this is going to get bad.
Yeah. And interesting. I love the word curiosity. And in all things other than potential violence, I love that word. But I don't want people to be curious about potential violence. I want them to be very cautious that this could be happening. And so that kind of segues into, so my company wrote a completely different definition for self-defense. If you Google the definition of self-defense, if I looked up Merriam-Webster or any of the classic, it will, I'm paraphrasing, say something to the effect of the physical act of protecting your property or your life. The physical act, And so in our system, in the timeline of violence, we talk about the detect and avoid phase. And then if you're in like a confined space, like an elevator, your home, at work, underground parking lot, now you're forced to diffuse and de-escalate. And then if push comes to shove and you're truly an incredible threat and in danger, you need to protect yourself, your family, you need to defend. We call that the 3Ds: detect, diffuse, defend. Detect and avoid, defuse and de-escalate, and if push comes to shove, defend morally, ethically, legally. So several years ago, when we were putting together this one-day Be Your Own Bodyguard program, I turned to my team and I said, the definition, the worldwide definition of self-defense doesn't even address situational awareness and de-escalation. It starts with, give me back my purse, or get out of my, let go of my head, right? Because it says the physical act. I said, that's so incomplete. And now let's go back to the 10,000 hours. If all you practice is the headlock or the lapel grab or the knife or the gun, there's a part of your brain that needs to wait for that moment to happen before you know what to do, because you've got zero education prior to that, right? It's like, I don't know how to like stop that fire. I only know how to put it out. So let's let the house catch on fire. Well, that's not very practical if we turn that into a violent, violent attack metaphor. So what we did is we sat around and we came up with a new definition that one day hopefully will be the universal definition. And it's this: when danger is imminent, choose safety. It's the decision to choose safety whenever danger is imminent. And for you to determine, is danger imminent here, you need to sort of explore. This is the curiosity. And I got the word, I love it, but I want to, for your listeners to go that, wow, like these snakes could be poisonous. I'm curious. Like, I want you to go, those are snakes. Do I know anything about them? What should I do right now? And it's choose safety. And if it turns out you get back to the front of the zoo and you go, hey, I got lost. I ended up in this like snake pit. You go, no, don't worry. They've all been like defanged, devenomized. You'd have been safe if they, okay, but wow. Like, find out after that you weren't in danger. So the choose safety model says, anytime my intuition says, don't eat that, don't do a deal with this person, don't go home with this person, don't go down this street. Instead of you going, this is bullshit, I'm not gonna, like, actually consider, why is my intuition whispering in my ear right now? And I ask people this: if you live in America, and you probably have listeners all over the world, so whatever currency, what would it cost you in your currency to choose safety? If you went, oh man, I just got lost, I'll turn this down. Something just creeped me out about this street. Okay, back out, turn around, don't drive down. What does it cost you to do that? Nothing. And what does it cost you if your intuition was right? Could cost you everything. Property, body, or life. It's a short list. Property, body, life. And
heck, I'm in the United States. My copay is $100, let alone all the other costs.
Right.
So one thing, this is assuming a rational mindset at the time. And you mentioned earlier on about dealing with fear. And it's very, very difficult to make rational decisions while we're afraid. So could you speak a bit to what kinds of things we can do, what kind of things you teach about recognizing fear and overcoming it in the moment to make the right decision?
Yeah, so great question. So the fear, so I created a whole program called No Fear, and it's spelled counterintuitively KNOW. No fear. And again, it's that same philosophy of, okay, I'm scared right now. If I avoid it, I'll always be afraid of that. But if I try to learn a little bit more of it, maybe I go, you know what, that's dangerous and I'll stay away from it. Or now that I tried that, I understand how to manage my fear, but I don't like that. Like, I'm afraid of heights, personally afraid of heights. I've gone skydiving twice. My second one was a free fall. Now, if you're afraid of heights, some people can't fly, let alone jump out of the airplane. But I've jumped out twice. I've jumped off big rocks and diving boards, stuff like that. And I hate heights. That's managing fear. So I've jumped out of the airplane. I've worked with a lot of military guys who, in one story I always tell, it's a fun one, and it'll make sense why I'm telling it here. I'm down at Fort Bragg, about to start a course on Monday. Got down a couple days early, and I'm talking to two of the guys about the course. And then after we do like our little, meeting about the course design, one of the guys says, "Hey, I'm going jumping later. Do you want to come?" And I know he means skydiving when he says jumping, but I said to him, like, I put my fingers on the table at the coffee shop, and I meant like jumping up and down like this. And he goes, "Ha ha ha." He goes, "No, skydiving." I said, "I know what you meant." I said, "Nah, like, hold on a sec. No, I'm busy. Plummeting to the planet Earth isn't on my schedule today." And he laughs and he does air quotes and he goes, "I thought you're Mr. Fear Management. What are you, scared?" I said, "Well, actually, I'm managing my fear by not jumping out of the airplane." And he laughs like you, and he's with a buddy who laughs, and his buddy laughs a nervous laugh. This guy laughs the making fun of laugh, like, right. And this guy's like a nervous laugh. I know right away through my intuition, he doesn't like to jump out of airplanes. But guess what? He's in the same tier 1 unit, which means he knows how to do it very well. Like 20,000 foot jumps with kit, right? I mean, he's in a tier 1 unit. He's jump qualified. He right. So this story here is, I think, super important, because a lot of times we look at a Van Damme movie, a Bruce Lee movie, a Chuck Norris movie, a John Wick movie, and we think that that's what experts look like, even though there's zero evidence of anybody doing any of that stuff ever. Like if you look at real fights online between cops and military and street fight, have you ever seen anything that even comes close to a movie fight? Never, zero, right? And so it's an interesting thing that still in the martial art world, there's this fantasy of this spinning hook kick to the head or flying side kick. I digress. Let me go back to the story. I'm at Fort Bragg. I say to the guy that's laughing at me, I go, "Hey, let me ask you a question. You're not afraid of jumping?" He goes, "No, I love it." He said, "I got like over 600 jumps. I go whenever I can." I said, "No fear." He goes, "No." I said, "Okay, let me pack your parachute for you today." And he leans at me, "Can I swear on your show?"
Yeah.
He goes, "You're not coming anywhere near my fucking parachute," right? And I said, "Did I just introduce some fear?" And he goes, "What?" I said, "What were you visualizing when I said, 'Let me pack your chute'?" And he goes, "Holy shit." And this is the whole point of this is my system, is I talk about the psychology of fear, not the physiology and biology of fear. In other words, if I had gone skydiving, and I've done it twice, my heart rate would be as fast as it could before I died. The other guy, beside the other guy that had the nervous laugh, he'd be up there, he'd be looking at me going, "You okay, Tony?" And I'd be like, "Yeah." And he goes, "Yeah, well, it's going to be okay, man. I don't like die." Like, he's calm, but he's like, "Man, I fucking hate this." But he knows how to do it. He knows the steps. The other guy who loves to jump is like, "Woohoo, you guys ready? Let's kill it." Like it, but he's the unicorn. Like, you should not be hanging out with somebody who likes violence, because that's what will attract the violence. So anyways, this is kind of a long kind of animated story about my fear management. Is what I did, and it's neat. I developed the core of it in the 80s when I first started doing scenarios. So, in the 80s, like, nobody was doing what we were doing. It was ridiculous. It was Fight Club with equipment on before Fight Club was a movie. We get together, create scenarios, and then and fight 6-on-2, 3-on-3, 1-on-1, and we create all these scenarios. It was during that I noticed that people who talked a big talk, had a big game, or actually had real world experience, panicked during these scenarios. And we actually, for 8 years, called the drills the panic attack scenario. That was the original names of it. And Panther Productions even came out with a video series called the Panic Attack series. And the reason why is because everyone would say, like, yeah, if this happened, I would do this, I would do this. We'd have them write out, scenarios. And then you'd watch like half of them, gosh, like freaking out, panicking. Not true panic attack, but, and I started thinking deeply, like, why is that? Like, here's a guy with cauliflower ears who's a judo jiu-jitsu guy, and he lost his total focus here and tapped out in this scenario, ran out of this scenario. Here's this other guy, he's a doorman at a club, in Montreal. I used to live in Montreal and teach there. And he's not doing really well. Oh, here's this little girl who's a sexual assault victim who's crying on the side, now comes in and she's like a badger, like fighting like crazy. Why is this 120-pound girl doing better than that 200-pound guy? And I would interview people and debrief people. And what I realized in the mid 80s is the people who manage their fear managed to fight. I'll say that again because it's heavy. The people who manage their fear managed to fight. It doesn't mean that they won, that they did as good as but they gave themselves permission to be in the fight by going, I'm scared, but I've got to do this. Where people who can't talk about their fear can't, and it's not to like, it's not about, hey, let's all be vulnerable. But if you know how to be vulnerable at the right time, in the right way, that takes courage and it represents strength if it's not manipulative. In this case here, just before a fight, to be able to say to your coach or your partner or yourself, holy shit, I'm so scared. People don't realize this. George St. Pierre, one of the greatest MMA fighters, did a bunch of interviews last year. He said that the worst day of my life was fight day. I'm the most scared ever. Mm-hmm. Tyson used to cry and throw up before many of his fights, right? I know Navy SEALs and other operators that, because there's a lot of bravado and, but the people who talk honest to you will go, yeah, we're scared shitless, but this was our job. We were trained. We knew a buddy of mine, Mike Ritlin, he's got a 3-hour podcast called Mic Drop. And it's like long form, like Rogan's. And I was a guest there. We were talking, and I started saying, there's one of the things I wish I could change in the tactical community is how macho everybody, and the martial art world, how macho everyone is about. Yeah, I like this. Fuck, that's why I carry. Like, fuck, if he comes here, like, I'm going, slow down. Like, stop armchair quarterbacking shit. And then this guy he's a retired SEAL, said, man, I can remember multiple times stacked outside a house, and we knew we were going to go in the house and be in a gunfight, and every single person in that house was going to try and kill us. And if we didn't win that gunfight, we were dead. And of course, the people around us were scared, but we were professionals. We were trained. We knew what to do. We knew how to manage our fear. And so I love those conversations because that was my intuition in the 80s that, like, if you look up fear and fear management, you get all sorts of like touchy-feely, fluffy stuff, and then a lot of fight, flight, freeze. But like, this is all forensic, like, level stuff. We don't need that. What we need is to tame, control the voice in our head that says, oh my God, you're going to die. And that voice needs to say, okay, you can get out of here. Take a deep breath. Look for an exit. Look for a target. Look for an improvised weapon. Play dead. Run. Fight now. Go. Grab an eye. Grab like it's if I could be an apparition coach, like a ghost coach, and you're on the ground, someone's kicking the shit out of you, and you decided you were going to call me, you want me whispering in your ear, what should I do? Like, fuck, he's killing me. What should I do? Grab that hammer over there, hit him in the head. Oh, I didn't see that. Thanks. Crap. Right. So, like, we want the coach whispering. What do we do when we're freaking out? We call people. But also what I mean is
phone a friend.
Yeah.
Phone a friend. Yeah. Okay.
But, it was a misleading question. But what do we do? Like, your roof's leaking. You can Google. You could Google, how to fix your roof, but you're probably going to call a roofer. You're going outside. Your car's broken. Mm-hmm. And you might be great with cars and roofs, so this doesn't work, but I'm not. But You could YouTube how to diagnose and treat
Yeah.
my non-working car, or you call a tow truck and bring it to the shop. Oh my God, my tooth.
Mm-hmm.
I could pull my tooth out myself, but I go to the dentist. So I like to tease people. Every time you have a problem where you go, oh my God, what do I do? You call a coach. And that coach in this metaphor is your roofer, your lawyer, your dentist. You're like, what should I do? Well, come in and see me. Oh, you don't need root canal. Yeah, you're fine. You like take this penicillin or antibiotic. Yeah, you got an abscess, whatever the fuck. I'm not a dentist, you know. But
Yeah.
but we go to an expert. But guess what?
Mm-hmm.
Almost every emergency in life, you have time to wait with the toothache. This isn't getting better. My car is sounding weird. That leak is getting worse. But there's one thing in your life that you don't even have time to dial 911 on, and that's sudden violence. And you know, like if the attack is happening because you don't understand the blueprint and how to improve your situational awareness, by the time you realize like you're right here with the bad guy, 911 is too late, right? So not to be dramatic, because there's so much, like you pointed out right in the beginning of the talk, so much of our system is soft skills, emotional, psychological, self-awareness, situational awareness, critical thinking. So there's real transcendent value to the training, because arguably the worst day of your life would be like a serious violent attack. And we could argue, no, you know, health, finances, the death of a loved one, like that's, life's a roller coaster ride, and that's horrible too. But like a random attack would really suck, not making light of it. So it's like, if you can avert that through some good soft skills, like why wouldn't you?
Now, it sounds like that idea of installing a coach software in your brain that kind of, so you understand the path to violence. You have a little checklist maybe, or if this happens, I'll do that, can help overcome the fear. I think every parent I've ever talked to, and I'm sure you've had this experience, there was that moment when your first child is kind of young where you're thinking, oh man, I should get help, followed immediately by, oh wait, I'm the help.
Right.
I did that. That's my job now.
Right.
And to install the knowledge that you need to be able to be the help that you need in that moment. Because like you say, when violence comes along, very often there's nobody there who can render help in the timeline that this violence is happening in.
And I want to point something out. I agree with that. I want to point something out. Like extreme violence like this is a rarity depending on where you live. So some of your listeners might be going like, okay, well, when's the last time like that? You know, if you're a parent and you've got kids, your kids are bullying or being bullied at some point in their life.
Yeah.
And I don't mean that like, what's he talking about? But just even like standing there as in a gang with somebody else making fun of something, it's participating in this bullying. And if your kid goes, man, this isn't right, I should tell them to stop, it's going to be fear that stops them from asserting. Well, they're going to punch me in the face, then they're going to bully me. Well, I can't go with that kid, I'm with the clique right now. Fear influences your kid's athletic career. Fear influences their academic standing, how you do on a test. You know, I got 3 kids. I remember my daughter Olivia not wanting to go to school because we moved and changed schools, and she's like hysterical, like does 7 or 8 years old at the time, not wanting to go to school, and me using the fear management system that I teach for self-defense to get her through that night to get her to school. The trick on it, you know, you asked me, you know, I went off on a crazy tangent. You asked me, you know, what are some tips and ideas? Probably the most significant one is when we're truly afraid of something, most of the time it's something that hasn't happened yet. And so we're actually visualizing something in the future that's debilitating us or immobilizing us in the present. It's like, I'm not going to school tomorrow. That's in the future. I'm not going to defend myself because that guy's going to kick my ass because look how big he is. He hasn't kicked your ass. You haven't fought yet, but you now decided you're the victim. So I tell people, it's a fun metaphor. You're the producer, you're the director, you're screenwriter, and you've cast yourself as the victim in your horror movie. What would you do if this was an action movie? Yeah, you get your ass kicked a little bit, but you got to figure out how to win. At the end of the movie, you got to figure out how to win. And it might seem like that's such a cliche. That's every shitty, Hollywood action movie. But there's a reason why those sell and people go to them. That's what we have to do, and that's the thread of our course is in the Be Your Own Bodyguard metaphor is if you were some celebrity, some company would pay for you to have a bodyguard. And they would stop you, from crossing the street when a car was, racing by. They would taste your food to see if it was being poisoned. And if someone came to attack you, they'd step in there and stuff. But most of us can't afford bodyguards. So who's your bodyguard, man? You're your bodyguard. And who's your kid's bodyguard? You're your kid's bodyguards. And if something happens to you, who takes care of them? So who's your bodyguard? Well, you're your own bodyguard, unless you don't know what to think or what to look for. But I did want to make it clear, the course is way more cerebral than it is physical and tactical. It's not like, okay, guys, everyone grab their hammer. Okay, these are the nails. Okay, bad guy, say no. And just, it's not like it's a part of the course, but it's the least important part of the course.
I liked what you mentioned about how these skills apply far outside of the imminent violence, where it can help you calm down before a test. It can help you in a board meeting in your first job when that one team member is kind of being a bit of a bully. I think anybody who would disagree with the statement that fear management also is important when you're dating has been married so long they forgot what it was like. And so it can affect your romantic life. And also, beyond the fact that you can apply these skills elsewhere, that also means you have all these other opportunities to practice those skills.
Yeah. And it's funny you say that, because so we've got the Be Your Own Bodyguard course. There's a block on fear management. We have a completely separate course called No Fear, live and online and stuff like that. So, but people, at the end of it, they're like, okay, so how do I get good at this? And the reality is life presents you with opportunities to practice courage all the time. One of the lines out of our course, my favorite line might be your next tattoo, if you had or your first tattoo, but it's, you can't be brave if you're not afraid. I love that line. You can't be brave if you're not afraid. A lot of it's counterintuitive again, because people don't think about that, because nobody wants to ever be afraid. But if you looked at the primary ingredient on the box of courage or the bottle of courage, it's going to say this is filled with fear. You need to have the fuel of fear to do something courageous. The guy that jumped in the airplane that I told you about, who loved it, was an adrenaline junkie. He didn't need courage to do that because he wasn't afraid. That was a thrill for him. The other guy in me, that was courage. That was fear management, right? So that's a huge one. It's just to remember that in life, whether it's business, whether it's something with your kids, whether it's quitting a job, starting a new job, taking a test, public speaking, whatever, our potential is always being nudged or cajoled by the conversation in our head, the movie in our mind. You're going to suck. Don't forget this. Oh, man, what if this deal doesn't happen? How are my kids going to turn out? And if you don't have the self-awareness to go, wow, I do this on a regular basis. Like people, I get asked this, man, hey, what's it like to have no fear? And I'm like, you talking to me? It's like, they think because I've done all this research and this is my company that I'm now like oblivious to or immune to. No, it's called fear management, not no fear. That's why I changed the name from NO Fear, like the adrenaline company, the No Fear company, to KNOW. We got to lean into fear. We got to get to no fear. And so, you know, like every day I got 3 kids. We live in a crazy world. Like my day is like this. I'll see something in the news. I'm like, are you fucking kidding me? You know, right away, my brain I stop working and my brain starts to produce a movie of where that mean tweet or that fake news, or is this true? And it's like the difference between like watching a commercial and going, I'm not going to go see that movie, it looks shit, or being in the movie for like 60 minutes hoping it gets better, not realizing what you did is you just robbed your life of 60 minutes of time, the only resource you can't get back. So the biggest thing in our fear management program is that understanding fear management, actually the superpower becomes time management. If you truly understand it, because the self-awareness alerts you to the fact that you are now producing a negative movie right now, and you're worrying about the future. So we use the acronym false expectations appearing real. False expectations appearing real. I'm visualizing a future event that's fucking up my life right now, and I need to stop that. And that event may be coming. Someone says, hey, I sold the apartment, everyone out, they're demoing it. You're going, no, but my whole family, I raised it. Like, you can go, this is not fair. Someone says, hey, you know, we're closing the company, you got 2 weeks. You're fired. Someone says, I'm leaving you. Someone says, whatever it is. And we can sit there with the movie, or we manage our fear. And I'm not saying it's easy, but when we manage our fear, we manage our time.
I think a place that most parents, any parent who's gotten to the teenage years, yes, has had this experience. This maps perfectly too, where you're home, it's late, they haven't checked in. Now that they have cell phones, they're not picking up their cell phone. Before cell phones, you're just sitting there doing nothing. And then the kid walks in the door and you light into them, not necessarily because what they did is so wrong, but because of how many hours we just spent terribly afraid that they were dead on the side of the road.
Yeah.
And if we had taken that time to manage that fear, to plan around things, to rehearse for the conversation when it comes, to check in with ourselves, that conversation would have gone a lot better.
Yeah. Or I mean, it's obviously up to the parent. But the most significant thing there, and that's a great example, and it's one that I've done many times, where I'm like, okay, she should have been home right now. Okay, she went out. Oh my God, did someone drug or drink? Is she getting raped right now? Where is she? Did she get kidnapped? She's like in your brain is like, and it's like, as a parent, you can't not think about it, but you don't need to think about it for 2.5 hours.
Yeah.
You can think about it for 5 minutes and go, there's nothing I can do. And then figure out what you are going to do, so that it's just always, it's proactive, intelligent, it's deliberate. And to your point, like, knock on wood, everything works out for everybody. They come home and you can intelligence say, listen, you'll understand this a lot better when you're older and you have kids, but holy shit, you can't do that to me. And here's why, right? And whatever the conversation is. And I've had that, and I've had both.
Yeah, I think, like I said, I don't think there's a parent who made it through the teen years that didn't have it. But that's another example of this knowledge of fear that is wrapped around physical self-defense against violence that can be applied in so many other parts of parenting and so many parts of life for people who aren't parents.
Well, if you think about, so there will always be a fear spike before any violence, right? Our physiology, and that's where the whole SPEAR system, my self-defense protocol, of how do we weaponize the startle flinch? Because in a surprise attack, you know, our body's physiological system will deploy our hands to our head to push away danger, and that'll be very much
David
like
McNeil calls that the oh shit block.
Who's that?
Dave McNeil, Doja Shorey guy.
Okay.
One of my mentors. He always calls that the oh shit block.
Okay. Sounds good. Yeah.
Right.
So I look at that as deploying like an organic airbag, right? But it's even smarter and cooler than an airbag, because the airbag needs the car to have impact. But our startle flinch system is even smarter. If I threaten to go hit you, your hands will start to deploy, right? So we create a whole system around that. But what triggers the startle flinch is fear. Now, but there's in our system, this is getting a little deep, a little nerdy, but there's the fear of impact talks to our body at a non-conscious level. The psychological fear that we've been riffing on for the last 30 minutes is a whole different animal. And it's an area that's not misunderstood. That part of understanding fear and fear management is the part that's transcendent through every avenue of life. And I always remind people that fear throttles everything we do, from who you talk to therefore who you get married to, how much money you earn, where you work, your ability to communicate. Like if you can't do that properly, that changes every relationship you have. It changes how much weight you lift. It changes whether you defend yourself. There's a moment in every decision at this non-conscious or unconscious level where we go, no, I don't want to do that. I remember, here's the stupidest story. I remember being 3 or 4 years old, which is a startlingly young age to have this recollection. But we're living in Canada. We used to go to Maine, to Algonquin and that whole area every summer, and they're famous for their saltwater taffy and fudge and all that. And I remember I was like 4 years old, and my mom goes into the store and buys chocolate fudge, and she orders it, and I don't understand. She orders it, and there we'll go back in the car, and I think that it looks like poo as a 4-year-old. And she says, here, try this, you're gonna like it. My brain sees it as shit, and I throw a fit. And my mom, it's old school, this is the 60s. I learned how to swim like this, jump in the water. No, jump in the water and I'll swim, and I'm gonna row the boat back to shore. Mom, I'm scared. Right? Like she'd be in jail right now, like in our snowflake generation, right? So that's how I learned how to swim, getting thrown out of a boat in a lake. I'm a pretty good swimmer. So she didn't gingerly, like she grabbed me and put this chocolate fudge in my mouth while I was like throwing a tantrum, because I literally thought she was putting, this is a weird story to tell here, but I was so scared, and she didn't understand anything about fear management, and that generation didn't, so she didn't know how to explain. But it wasn't until I got the taste of sugar, and now I got a freaking sweet tooth, that I realized this wasn't shit. And then, don't give me any fudge because I can't put it down. I don't know what got me onto that, but it was this idea. We were talking about something in that image of that and kids and whatever. I apologize to anybody who I just traumatized with my mother shoving fudge in my mouth story.
I think we all have something like that from our childhood and moving forward. But so I want to really thank you for coming on today and explaining this. Where can folks find out about you and your various programs?
So depending on what you're looking for, depending on who you are, probably the best thing is to start at our company page, BlauerTrainingsystems.com. My last name, Blauer, B-L-A-U-E-R, systems training, BlauerTrainingsystems.com. And I think my team probably sent you the links. If you would stick a bunch in there, I would encourage people, if especially the parents. I've got a dad who's driving his 3 kids down for a private session with me and one of my trainers this weekend. We've done it with families before. We do our Be Your Own Bodyguard courses all over the world. They're one-day events. But if you're like going, this sounds a little interesting, and if you're afraid to look into fear management more, note the irony, right? So there's an ebook that I produced called Making Friends with Fear, and get it. It's free. I'm always transparent about this. It'll stick in my funnel and it'll say, hey, do you want to get his no fear program? You probably should, and it's not expensive, but start with the no fear thing. It's only 9 pages. It'll take you 12 minutes to read, and it'll give you a lot to think about. And people ask me, just 9 pages? Why didn't you write a book? Those 9 pages took me 40 years to write. I didn't want to write a book. I have books. I have thousands of pages of other stuff. But I wanted something where if I could just influence people a little bit, it had to be short, it had to be sweet. So, invest in that, check that out. I've got, again, parents hitting me up all the time, especially now, the last 2 years, parents calling me up going, my kid's developing anxiety, doesn't want to socialize, 2 years of playing sports with the mask on, whatever. And they're doing the no fear program with their 10 and 11 and 12-year-olds. It's amazing. And it's bringing the parents closer together. The parents are learning and the kids are learning. I wish until my life would be completely different if my parents or my teachers had the skill to teach me the difference between the biology or physiology of fear and the psychology of fear.
Oh, that makes really good sense. All right, before we let you go, one last question, which is, what's the really smart question I should have asked you, but I haven't?
The really smart question that you should have asked me, but you haven't. I don't know, man. You asked me a lot of good questions, and I don't have a clever answer for that, because I think you asked me solid questions that drew a lot of the substance of the system out. Usually if a talk's a little bit more superficial, someone says at the end, is there one last thing you want to share with my audience? And like, that's usually, I go, man, I wish they'd asked me about this, but I'll say it now. But I've said it. The most important thing, man, you drew it out, was you can't be brave if you're not afraid. It's at the end of the day, for all of us, whether you're 10 years old, whether you're 100 years old, whether you're going to be doing something, and then all of a sudden there's going to be an obstacle in front of you, and you're going to go, fuck. And if you don't believe in yourself and give yourself permission to win, it's not going to happen. So those 2 lines that I shared earlier, the people who manage their fear manage to fight. It doesn't guarantee victory, but it guarantees you're in the fight. And then to remember that you can't be brave if you're not afraid.
Well, I have no follow-up on that. That's excellent. You heard it here, folks. So thank you all for watching today. Thank you, Mr. Blauer, for coming on.
Thank you.
I'll put your links in the show notes for folks who want to check his programs out. They have been famous, world famous, for good reason, for closing in on half a century now.
Crazy,
so
right?
Definitely check his material out. Thank you again for coming on. Thank you, everybody, for watching. We'll see you next time. Stay safe, everyone.